Hey everyone, welcome to the program WRSA Radio. I am your host, Grenadier One. As always, I hope you're having a good week, especially in the wake of the continued victories that the Supreme Court keeps handing down to us. It's been a kind of a wild time. As I posted the show last week, I right as I was kind of going in and putting things up, I got the headlines that SCOTUS had overturned Roe, and I have to say that it was somewhat of a wow moment. I know that we had heard of this ruling before, thanks to the still unidentified and unpunished leaker, but it was seeing it finally confirmed that made the whole moment real. Um, and as I said over on Gab, I never thought I would see that moment. I felt it's ever since I was a teenager, that this would be this the law of the land, and it would go on for as far as we could see. I mean, there was just no, reasonable way that I saw that would ever be overturned. And mostly, I guess, because I could never imagine a time when the court would be composed of justices like we have now, and that it would always be this sort of split court that would go 5-4 in on a decision one way or the other, with one vote kind of swinging back and forth on these really heavy social issues. And I just kind of thought that's the way that it would always play out, because that's the way that the establishment liked it. But before you think I'm starting to lavish praise on them, let me finish here. Even after this wow moment, um, I've still been waiting for the hammer to drop. I can't, you know, imagine that there wasn't some other gut punch that was going to take something from us after giving us something, right? Something was coming down the pipe. I don't know, but I think we got that today when the court ruled, correctly, I might add, and I know some people don't like to hear that, but I do think it was correct that Biden can end President Trump's policy of remain in Mexico, which is an executive order that President Trump put into place to, curb the illegal immigrants from fleeing their court dates and just running off into the country like the Biden administration wants. Um, and I say this was the correct ruling, even though I don't like what Biden intends to do with this policy. I don't think it's the right the right decision or the right way that it should be dealt with. But I do think that the president has the power to put an end to executive orders that were put in place by the president before them. The president must have this power to end those previous executive orders. Those are not law. It's just how the administration wants to operate within the confines of the law and regulations. At least, that's what it's supposed to be. But the following president must be able to change those things. Otherwise, it's just dictatorial power that really can't even be stopped by Congress. It's the executive being able to put a regulation or a de facto law in place without getting congressional approval. That doesn't make any sense. Um, which is all the more reason to ask why it is that DACA was made off limits. DACA was an executive order put into place by Obama, and the court ruled that it had to be allowed to stay in place and forced Trump to deal with it. They forced Trump to keep it there, and keep his administration dealing with the fallout and the ramifications of it. And that kind of inconsistency is what gets people very angry and makes people wonder exactly, what the heck is going on with the court. Now, all of that aside, that's not really what I want to focus on today, because the court ruled today on something that I think is going to turn out to have far more reach and far more precedent than even the Roe, overturning Roe v. Wade. And that is the case of West Virginia versus the EPA. And this was a major case that has so far kind of flown under the radar and escaped the attention of the media, but will no doubt come into focus and might be the shocking out of the blue moment that will finally just blow up the talking heads and the Sunday media types. And honestly, I had really not, I didn't know that this case was pending out there. I can't say that I really, I don't go in and read the docket of the court, at the beginning of their term and see what their, cases are pending or anything like that. I'm sure a lot of you are. I just look and watch what cases come up, and as they start getting attention and start getting some focus from different sources and different people who do that. I wasn't even aware of this, and then I saw some things being posted about this the other day, and I said, "Wow, this is actually pretty big." And if you don't know, if you haven't seen those things, this case was about the EPA imposing these blanket regulations and restrictions on power plants to control their carbon emissions. And they, of course, are trying to fight the global warming by forcing power plants to basically emit nothing, and thus ultimately shutting them down. And we're supposed to get our power from the wind and the sun and whatnot, and when that's not anywhere even close to enough power to power the world that these people have envisioned, and we're just supposed to freeze to death and starve. But and when we're all gone, I suppose the elites will look around for someone smart enough to run a nuclear power plant or something. But who knows? In the meantime, the EPA is on a mission to kill coal-fired power plants in the U.S., and the state of West Virginia took them to court on it. Well, the court says, yeah, hey, EPA, you don't have the power to just randomly and arbitrarily set these regulations in place. That's a power that, like it or not, rests directly in Congress, and they can't abdicate it to an executive agency. Yay, big win for coal-fired power plants and West Virginia, and honestly, for humanity in general. But you need to recognize this is probably far more reaching than you might imagine because of the basis for this decision, the basis of what they underpinned this decision with. See, for decades, Congress has been doing this. They are voting on legislation that they've not even read, and then they're pushing the implementation and the enforcement of that legislation off on these executive offices and agencies. They're saying, hey, we want to end this thing, or we want to regulate this thing, and you guys go figure out how to regulate it. Well, that's not right. Okay? That's not how it's supposed to work. These agencies are given very broad leeway to read this legislation how they see fit and enforce it to fit an agenda. And this is, in fact, what has empowered the deep state and has grown the deep state into this monstrous cancer that it is. This is how you get rogue agents who take out, personal conflicts and personal agendas on sheep farmers and guitar makers and all kinds of innocent people. It's the full weight, power, and budget of the federal government brought to bear on just unsuspecting innocent people who are just trying to make a living. And they do this not because they violated a law, but a rule that was invented by some bureaucrat in an office 2,000 miles away and has no idea what the full ramifications or the full scope or spread of what that ruling is going to become. And it has no resemblance to what Congress, who you might recall are supposed to work for us, it has no resemblance to what they intended in their initial laws or their original vote that they made. It's just some agent who feels like they now have the power to do what they want and do it to whomever they want in the process. And it doesn't matter if it breaks those people. It's all in the name of pushing an agenda. Well, this ruling is an end to that. At least it should be an end to that, because so much of what afflicts Americans when it comes to being in conflict with their government is based on this idea that federal agencies have the power to make laws. And they do not. They absolutely do not. That power resides solely in Congress and the president signing a bill into law. You all remember the little cartoon that taught you how that works. Congress cannot pass the buck on and allow executive agencies to make up rules and regulations just out of thin air. They must vote on all of these things, and the president must approve them. That's how it's supposed to work. Now, we will, of course, have to wait and see how broadly this ruling from the court is interpreted and how it propagates, because I have to imagine that there's going to be massive fallout from this, and there's probably going to be a lot of pushback when the full ramifications of it sort of dawn on people. Now, in case you're not realizing what this means, let me kind of bring it into an area that you might be more familiar with. This ruling clearly cuts the legs out from under the ATF and their, ever shifting interpretations of gun laws, particularly like the NFA. If it's not specifically spelled out in the NFA, then they don't have the power to infer something into law. They can't decide that shoestrings are a machine gun. They can't determine that a bump stock is a machine gun. They can't determine that a forced reset trigger is a machine gun, because the functionality of those things are not clearly spelled out in the NFA. They're creating that out of thin air. Now, guys, this is huge, and I think it will be the basis for legal warfare on these rogue federal agencies for years to come. And assuming all of this, of course, is assuming that we don't collapse before that, which is not in evidence, by the way. Now, I can't be happier here. Well, I could be happier, but if I spell that out, it wouldn't be safe for work. So anyway, this is another domino that the court has toppled, and it really spins us off into the realm of speculation regarding what is going on here. Do we still have some level of functionality to our system? Is this really legit? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, ideally, you kind of hope, okay, well, maybe it's not as broken as we think it is. Maybe we're not as far gone as we think that we are. I think surely it's because I think that while the court is no doubt compromised, I think the level of compromise is lower, and maybe it's from a different faction than the other aspects of the government. I kind of think that this is the court and its handlers pushing back and saying, hey, we still matter, and we still have a say in what's going on. And it's kind of a reminder that there is a third branch of government to the other two. I don't know if that's the real situation, but I'm not going to look at a win and try to pull the rug out from under it. There's a lot of folks doing that, I think, and kind of the always taking the cynical negative approach. I don't know that you're ever wrong doing that with government, but sometimes that stuff gets a little old, and you have to look at the bright side of things. Even if it is just to maintain a little hope, which we have to have, right? So, these have been a series of wins, the likes of which we've not received in a long time. So, like I said, I don't want to poo-poo them and really crap on them and take them down, but I don't know. It just really makes you kind of wonder what's going on, what's really at play here, and I think it leads us to some other questions. What do we do about it? How do we take advantage of these wins, and really, are they some wind in our sails and a way to build on it? That's a good question, and something I have to really keep thinking about for some time to really kind of form a clear answer, because I can't tell you what you need to do with the fallout from this right now. I don't know, maybe it's just because it's so new and I really haven't had time to process sort of long term from this. I know it's important, but capitalizing on this is just something that's probably more of a long-term action, and it might take more time than we have. We're seeing some immediate gains from these decisions, as the left is in just 3 Mile Island level of meltdown over Roe. So, other than keeping the memes going and the trolling going to just keep driving that home, I can't really tell you where this is all going to go. I know I'm happy to see the meltdown. I'm happy to see these people really reveal the level of depravity that they have reached. I mean, some of these videos and these photos that we're seeing from these protests of these women who are debasing themselves in public and just hysterical screaming, and just the behavior is just absolutely crazy and insane. And it's I think I mentioned on Gab, I said something to someone about, this is when you read back in history and you say, well, why did men treat women this way? Why did they lock them away? And you would read about them talking about women who were hysterically screeching about something in a public square, and you're like, well, surely that's the patriarchy or what have you. When you're younger, that's how you're taught to read these things, or how we were taught to look at those kinds of things as, oh, this was, the males oppressing the females and whatnot. And now that no, that is really the way it was. These guys were seeing and reporting exactly what was happening. These women were acting insane, and they were being locked away and put away for their own safety and the safety of everyone around them. You really have to go back and say, hey, you know what? I did my ancestors and forefathers a disservice by thinking that they were acting irrationally, putting women in these places, because clearly some of them need to be to have that done. This is the level of insanity here is crazy, and I think seeing that is eye-opening for people. It's eye-opening for people who are sort of on the fence, and not that I think that too many people were on the fence, so to speak, about this particular issue, Roe and abortion, but people who were more moderate in their view about it, when they see people like that, when they see people behaving this way, and the violent reaction that they're having, I think it makes them go, well, I don't know. I understand, the idea of body autonomy, but this is just crazy. So I think all of that works to our advantage and helps us along the way. And I think something about the greater picture is, I think this is all indicative of the end. It's not necessarily where we think it will end, or how we think it will end, because your guess is as good as mine on that. But I think it's the end. And I get these images of helicopters in the sunset when I say that, for more than the obvious reasons, but I digress. I think what we are seeing is the last vestiges of the empire crumbling, and those who have backed and supported it are coming to the understanding that they can't keep it floating anymore, and it's time to get off the sinking ship and kind of leave this hulk to the pores to fight over the lifeboats, and that's sad, but in a way it's a good thing. If they get out of the way, we may be able to yet save the ship, and at least keep some of it afloat to reach some level of safety. And all of these displays of lunacy and irrational behavior by the followers of the left just bring that more to the forefront, and bring that to the reality that anybody who's still undecided about these things, you would hope that they would see, wow, these are the people that I'm in league with. These are the people that I'm following or agreeing with. Wow. So what I want to convey is that while this coming time will be the most difficult thing we have ever done in our lives, it will sort these things out, and we will be done with them one way or another. Reality kicks in for people in these times, and it either sends them completely over the edge where they get dealt with, or it silences them into compliance, and they go along to get along and to fit in and not be a nail for someone to hammer down. And all these social conflict things that people think are a big deal, all that sorts itself out. You don't have time to worry about your kinks or your midlife crisis if you have no food and the local warlord is coming around for tribute again. The forces that impart law and order, and as a part of that demand you keep that kind of stuff to yourself, well, they start looking real good compared to the warlord. And those forces start gaining momentum and people behind them and backing. The civilization that rises from this will be a better one because of that. It will flourish, and it will replace this degenerate and ugly world that we live in now. I have no doubt about that. But folks, that fire is going to burn very hot, and for some time before the world is ready to come out of that crucible. Until it hits, we need to train, and we need to build networks, and we need to meet face to face. And that's about the best advice I can give everyone on this. So do something this weekend as we celebrate Independence Day. It's not the 4th of July, it's Independence Day. Keep that in mind. Remind everybody of that. Do something that represents that independence. Meet fellow patriots, fellow resistors face to face. Go train or build some other capability that will make your journey through that fire easier and simpler and more survivable. And that's all I got time for this week, guys. Like and subscribe. Come see us over on Gab and the Mothership, and I will see you on the next episode.